Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, or East Timor, is part of the Indonesian archipelago between the South China Sea and Indian Ocean. The conflict between East Timor and Indonesia occurred when the Portuguese, who had once controlled the island, withdrew and Indonesia invaded and annexed East Timor. The invasion and subsequent annexation was extremely violent, and many human rights violations reportedly occurred during Indonesia's control. The international community and the United Nations were slow to exert pressure to end the violence and become involved in the conflict due to business interests. However, the international community and the UN were vital in allowing East Timor to eventually gain its independence. In the 16th century, Portugal established colonial control over the eastern part of the island of Timor, while the Dutch controlled the rest of the archipelago. The Dutch eventually gave up their colonies in 1949. These colonies later formed Indonesia. The Portuguese retained control of East Timor until 1975, when Portugal decided to dissolve its colonial empire and withdraw from the region. The Portuguese withdrawal left the island vulnerable to civil war, invasion, and conquest, events which later took place. Questions arose as to whether East Timor should remain independent or integrate into Indonesia. A small-scale civil war broke out in East Timor between the pro-independence Fretland group and the pro-integration Apodetu group. Fretland group declared victory and independence for East Timor. Several days later, on December 7, 1975, Indonesia invaded and annexed East Timor, claiming it as the 27th province of Indonesia and starting a long, violent persecution of the East Timorese people. Australia was the only country to officially recognize the annexation, as it had a vital interest in the Timor Gap, an area with oil and natural gas reserves. It officially recognized East Timor as part of Indonesia. Australia and Indonesia signed the Timor Gap Treaty, giving Australia billions of barrels of oil. However, the US, UK, and other Western nations did not condemn the actions of Indonesia, as they also all had business interests in the area. Indonesia was a main trading partner of the West, had many oil and gas reserves, and was also strategically located. Indonesia had also been one of the main buyers of military weapons from the US and the UK. The UN was also slow to exert pressure on Indonesia to withdraw from East Timor and stop the violence because the US and UK, two permanent members of the Security Council, did not want harsh action against Indonesia because they did not want to risk their economic interests. They often abstained from voting on matters related to Indonesia and East Timor, making action impossible. Britain, Canada, Japan, and India also declined to condemn Indonesia's actions. Violence and human rights violations continued to increase. Finally, in 1991, the conflict in East Timor captured world attention with the Santa Cruz Massacre, where a funeral procession was viewed by the Indonesian soldiers as a pro-independence demonstration. They opened fire into the crowd, killing approximately 250 innocent people. Weapons used in the massacre were sold to Indonesian soldiers by the U.S. military. The U.S. also trained those responsible for the attack. In spite of this, the U.S. and its allies doubled economic aid to Indonesia as they felt it was necessary to condone Indonesia's actions in order to support their own economic interests. However, the Santa Cruz Massacre sparked grassroots campaigns across the U.S. that pushed Congress to end its support for Indonesia, which it eventually did, and grant East Timor its independence. In 1997, the Asian economic crisis caused the resignation of Indonesian President Suharto, who previously feared giving East Timor its independence would destabilize Indonesia and the rest of the region. However, his successor, B.J. Habib, did not hold these fears and agreed to hold a referendum on East Timorese independence. In 1998, Indonesia proposed a limited autonomy for East Timor within Indonesia. This proposal helped talks of East Timor's independence progress. Finally, on May 5, 1999, the United Nations mission in East Timor was established to oversee the transition period after the East Timorese voted on the referendum. The agreement also said that Indonesia was responsible for maintaining order in East Timor until its status was secure. In August 1999, despite violence from pro-Indonesian militia groups, the referendum on independence passed with an overwhelming majority, 78.5% of the vote. After independence was declared, the violence continued and the Security Council put pressure on Indonesia to stop the violence, which only continued to escalate. After much international pressure, Indonesia finally allowed international peacekeeping forces into the country, and Indonesian armed forces were removed. After the Indonesian armed forces left the country, the UN Transitional Authority in East Timor intervened in the area in order to help East Timor establish a stable government. In 2002, East Timor's first constitution was signed into effect, and the territory's first presidential elections were held in April, where Jose Alexander Gusamo, a one-time rebel leader, was elected, officially making East Timor an independent state. The international community played a vital role in the progression of the conflict in East Timor. Because of economic interests, the international community failed to become involved in the conflict, allowing business interests to become political interests, which caused almost 200,000 deaths in the conflict. However, the international community was also instrumental in allowing East Timor to secure its independence. Without such support, East Timor would not have its independence today.